And welcome into this edition of Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network. Also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. He is Denny Thompson. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green, and Denny, the Gators get a much-needed win over Missouri. And look, was it pretty? Not necessarily, but it was a good win. You feel good about things going into what I think is a pretty interesting LSU game Saturday night.
Yeah, huge game Saturday night. I don't think Missouri's played a pretty game.
No.
I mean, that's the one thing you can say, excuse me, for Missouri, is every game they've played in has looked like that game for the opponent. So, I mean, I think they're really stingy on defense, and they're, probably more talented than what traditional SEC fans want to admit.
And they're better than their record would indicate.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to say it. Like, it's a good – every win's a good win for this Florida team. I think this is a Florida team that, you could argue has a chance in every single game, but also has a chance to lose in every single game.
Yeah.
Right? So I think any win is going to be rewarding. But I also think – you're starting to see a little bit of growth as a team and as a unit, from the coaching to the players. It seems like they're getting into a little bit better rotations, depth charts changing a little bit each week. So it looks like they're starting to kind of make a move here to, who's performing and who's not performing. It's not just practice. They have enough film now to where they can say, hey, this guy's a gamer. He needs to be out there.
What was your thought on Anthony Richardson on Saturday?
I mean, he played okay. It's like, if you look at the stats, you think, God, he played terrible. Mm-hmm. But I didn't get that sense.
No, I thought he played well enough to win.
Right. I didn't get the sense he played terrible. I think, pretty banged up. And so I think that was pretty obvious, right? Like, so I don't think they utilized him as much or in a way that we would hope to see him this Saturday. But all in all, not bad, just not. That's the danger of having that Tennessee game. Mm-hmm. Right? Is now people are like, well, if it's not 400 yards, what are we doing? And I think he barely cracked 200 total, right? He didn't crack 200 total.
And correct me if I'm wrong, it's just the vibe I'm getting, probably moving forward. Anthony's going to do what it takes to keep his team in the game or to win the game. And he did not have to be incredible on Saturday like he had to be in Knoxville. He had to be good enough to beat Missouri, and that's what he was.
Well, I think from a physical standpoint, that's where he needed to be this past Saturday. But I think moving forward, and I talked to him yesterday, day before yesterday, something like that.
Weekly reminder. You're the quarterback trainer.
If you don't, yeah.
I'm just saying, because people ask me, how does Denny know? Because we have a different audience every week.
Yeah.
Denny trains Anthony Richardson, has done so for many years.
Yeah, and it's like I always start to say something. I'm like, whoa, I can't say that. I don't know. He's not going to be 100% the rest of the year, right? Like, what is his new 100%? But they need it to be this Saturday. They need it to be this Saturday for several reasons. One, to win. Mm-hmm. But two, this is a humongous recruiting weekend for Florida.
Yeah.
Massive. The game is sold out, right? So if Anthony plays well, that place is more electric. That place is louder. And listen, now more than ever, that matters in recruiting. Because now, especially this time of year, you've got 4- and 5-star guys there Saturday who are down to, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, whatever it is. We asked Billy when he came in, hey, can we step up the recruiting game? Can we get to the big boys? Well, he's doing that, right? And so now they've got the facilities. Everything, the boxes are checked everywhere. Now they just need to see something exciting on the field and an electric atmosphere. And Florida fans have held up their end of the bargain. Now it's time for the team to hold up their end of the bargain in that place to get to rocking. One, for you win the game, and two, so you win future games.
I don't know how you felt about this. Back to Missouri for a moment, because obviously we got to dive into LSU, the whole Brian Kelly, Billy Napier dynamic. But back to the Missouri game, very rarely am I satisfied or even happy about a 24-17 win over Missouri. And I don't know if other people that were watching this felt this way. I thought that's a good win.
No, I agree. I agree. I also think it's like we're halfway through the season almost, right?
Yeah, we're at the halfway point.
Yeah, so I think you kind of know what Florida is. And so any SEC win, I think you'll feel that same way against South Carolina if they pull that one out, right? Like any SEC win is a good win for this team, right? And really, honestly, I mean, you look at what Alabama's done. They've struggled through a couple. You look at Georgia the last couple. I mean, I think that's kind of the case around the league. I mean, Auburn is damn near dysfunctional right now, right? They can't buy a win. Texas A&M is struggling, right? So, I mean, I think any win you get in the conference, Kentucky, from week to week, struggling.
And, I mean, Will Levis didn't play.
Right. But even against Ole Miss.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, I just think it's such – Arkansas. I mean, crap, look at Arkansas. A month ago, I would have stood on this table and said they're a top 10 team. Right? So I just think football is so competitive, and the transfer portal now has made college football more like the NFL, where on any given Saturday, something can happen for the most part. That I think every win should be, somewhat celebrated.
Every week, too, Montrell Johnson just continues to impress. Yeah. Trevor Etienne, Naquan Wright. I mean, look, Florida wanted to run the ball this year. That's one thing they have done. Yeah. They have run the ball 6 games in, and the future for Montrell Johnson, who will be back next year, Trevor Etienne's a true freshman, that running game has a very bright future in Gainesville.
Man, I'm very excited about the future in Gainesville. I know what's going on down there. I know what's being done inside the program and on the recruiting trail. And Florida fans are like most fan bases. Everybody's pretty impatient right now. Mm-hmm. Guys, I just 3 years from now, like I think Florida's a top 5-7 program annually with Billy Napier. I really, truly believe that. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
If you could rewind the clock back, and again, this isn't fair, it's like 6 years ago, but you were still pretty much, you were in the know, right. and with 6 points. I mean, you talked to a lot of guys in college football around the country. Can you compare Georgia 2016, Kirby's first year, to to Napier 2022 and Florida's first year?
I don't know. I'd have to go back and see that. I mean, from a recruiting perspective,
just overall program,
probably, because I don't think it was a great year, was it?
Georgia went 8-5.
Yeah,
Kirby's first year.
But you got the sense that they were starting something from a recruiting. Yeah, I think so, and even down to they always have had nice facilities at Georgia, but when Kirby came, they stepped up the game, right? And I think you could go as deep as that, and Florida's kind of doing the same thing. The staff that Napier has, from somebody who spends a good amount of time down there, it's not just staff to have staff. These people are busy. And these people are, like, there is no stone left unturned down there in Gainesville. So if this doesn't work, it won't be because Napier and his staff didn't give every single thing they have into this. He's dialed into the cause.
Today's Gator Podcast, Gator Bytes, is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. For the highest quality care, you can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for any orthopedic injury or concern. You can log on to their website by going to se-ortho.com, and you can listen for Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, the good doctor, Kevin Murphy, on Thursday mornings in the 7 o'clock hour with Jeff and Dan right here on 1010XL for his weekly analysis of injuries in sports. I think Saturday night is fascinating. You mentioned the recruiting angle of it, which is certainly a big one. If you want to talk about the game itself, 2 monsters in the SEC that are in some rebuild modes right now, one in the West, one in the East, a big rivalry with Florida and LSU, 2 first-year head coaches that have experienced both success and downtimes in year number 1 already. Man, the parallels between LSU and Florida really, really striking.
And 2 teams that at times have looked fantastic this year and at times have looked
very pedestrian.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, what happens if, and this game has a history of bringing out the best in both teams.
I said last night, if you're a Gator fan, just assume going in, something terrible is going to happen to you that's going to benefit LSU.
Right.
There's going to be a 19 bounces, and the ball is going to magically land in an LSU receiver's hand.
Shoe's going to fly somewhere
for a touchdown. Just know that something horrible is going to happen, and you have to overcome that.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the exciting thing about this game. If you can get the best of both teams in that environment, it's going to be a blast to watch. It's kind of an overlooked game nationally because this weekend is unbelievable.
It's a great weekend.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Marcus Stokes is taking his official this weekend. And so that's the only reason why I know, and that's by design. That's the only reason why I know like how much they're putting into this weekend from a recruiting perspective. I would expect and I hope the energy to match all the way around. Fans, players, recruits, coaches, everything. I would think this is going to be a pretty lit place on Saturday night.
Well, it all kind of lines up. 7 o'clock, ESPN, under the lights, LSU, Florida. I'll tell you this.
Following Tennessee, Alabama.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll tell you this from an LSU point of view, and I don't know how many LSU fans believe this, but I know 2 that do, because they're buddies of mine that live in New Orleans. Big game for Brian Kelly in the sense that there are people in that state that wanted Billy Napier. And if Napier beats Brian Kelly in both year number ones for both guys, that'll add to that noise in the system, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a big game from a fan's perspective on that. I don't think the coaches give...
No, I'm just talking about from the fan base.
Yeah. In fact, I don't think... The more I get involved with this, the outside noise that fans and that media and things like that create... is not paid attention to on any level. In fact, if it's paid attention to, is made fun of for the most part.
Really?
Yeah.
Like Auburn. They're not paying attention to the...
Well, I'm not... No, Auburn's a dumpster fire.
Okay.
Now, Auburn's got a coach about to leave.
Because Auburn fans are furious.
What I'm saying is specifically LSU and Florida with first-year head coaches.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, it's our job, right? Our job is to make storylines. But at the end of the day, you're talking about 2 guys building a program. Right, 2 guys who have had success in the past, especially Brian Kelly. This first year that's just it. It's just their first year, right? You're trying to build a culture. You're trying to build a program. Whatever happens Saturday night can either assist you in that or you just know you got a little bit further to go with it. I think outside of that, anything drawn from this game that has to do with the coaches is just talk.
Anthony Richardson versus Jaden Daniels. How would you assess that, the quarterback matchup?
Man, it's really interesting. I've watched a lot of Jaden Daniels through the years. And ever since his freshman season at Arizona State, because his freshman season was maybe his best season. I don't know numbers-wise. I'm just saying what I visually saw.
Mm-hmm.
Jaden is very elusive, but is also at times frustrating because he'll miss the easy pass on you, or he'll take off without getting through any progressions at all. But man, those quarterbacks are dangerous in college. Those guys, if they see the field well from a running perspective, it's hard, man. It's hard, and I don't think there's much of a parallel between he and Anthony. I think they're 2 completely different players. They both run, and that's about it. I think Anthony throws the ball a little bit better than what Jaden does, but he's a dangerous quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very dangerous quarterback. Their future is Nussmeier, who's his backup, who is a fun watch, by the way. If he happens to come in, very energetic. His dad was the offense coordinator at Florida at one point, which is how I know him. And he's a good player, man. Good player. He's going to be fun to watch the next couple of years.
And I think Florida fans, look, I think you need to start enjoying these LSU games because once Texas and Oklahoma come in to the SEC, there is a real chance that Florida LSU could go away.
Man, Florida fans been talking about getting rid of LSU for years. Yeah.
But no, you're right about that. Some have. I've always thought that this rivalry doesn't get the respect it's due, and I get it. Florida fans are so caught up with Florida State and with Georgia and to an extent Tennessee that LSU is kind of on the back burner. It's been a great rivalry.
No, it has.
It's been a great rivalry.
It has, but I mean, how many times have you heard Florida fans talking about other teams, except for Tennessee, because Tennessee's got Alabama every year? Like, who's Georgia's?
Auburn.
Yeah, right. They've been down, right? So, I mean, I don't think it was on purpose. I think whenever the SEC kind of set that up and when it fell into place,
well, they got rid of
great matchups.
Yeah, they got rid of Florida Auburn because they wanted to keep the oldest rivalry in the Deep South.
Right,
Georgia,
which makes
Auburn.
sense. Yeah, which makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it'll be missed, but dang, I'd much rather have a rotation of LSU and Oklahoma and Texas. And
would it be nice to play different teams?
Yeah.
Because like we talked about, there's 10 years that you can go without going to a certain SEC stadium. That'll change once the expansion happens.
But, man, I to your point, I can remember this LSU game when Tebow played, and LSU went for it on fourth down every time. And
I was there.
Yeah, I was
5
too.
fourth downs.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to die leaving the stadium. I ever told you the story? So we're leaving the stadium. I think it was Keyston Moore fumbled the ball, and then LSU recovered, and Ryan Perilou scored the game-winning touchdown in 2007. So me and my buddy are leaving the stadium, and we had to walk through the LSU student body to get it back to our car. We're on the opposite side of the stadium. So they're all celebrating, and we're just kind of minding our P's and Q's. And this little 4'0" LSU student comes up and just whacks my buddy in the shoulder. Just hard. I mean, bam.
Yeah.
And my buddy's not a small guy. So he stops. And he's thinking about it. He's like weighing his options, and I thought he would just keep going. And he said something I can't repeat. I guess I could repeat it here, but I'm not going to. He said, blankety blank, it's go time. And he turned around. And I'm like, we're going to die in the parking lot of Tiger Stadium. We're outnumbered by thousands. I had to tackle my buddy into the bushes so he didn't go after that LSU student.
No, I mean, it is an intense atmosphere there. Obviously, this game's in Gainesville, but my point being, I took my dad to that game, but you could start at that game, and then you go to, like, the Hurricane games.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
The field goal that bounced right into the fake field goal.
Yeah, obviously the shoe game. Like,
the goal line stand.
That one.
Oh, the Hurricane game, right.
Yeah, that one I felt like kind of ratcheted everything up because then they had 2 games in Gainesville, right?
Right.
So
and the Brad Stewart pick 6 is one of those games.
That's right, off of?
Oh, it was
Joe
Burrow. Yeah.
So, I mean, I get the sense of, man, I hate to lose that game because this game's exciting every year, but so will Texas. That'll be exciting. So will Oklahoma. You know, it all works out.
You know, you talk about Brian Kelly and Billy Napier. How would you assess both guys year number 1? We'll begin with Brian Kelly.
Man, I think Brian Kelly, he's still trying to find, like, where he fits in this whole thing.
He can't lose by 27 at home. I mean, that was a bad loss last week.
Right. It's like Napier, I'm kind of fumbling around on this because I don't know how I want to say this. Napier fits what Florida is, it seems, right? Like, he comes in, he's got a little bit of Spurrier to him.
You mean he didn't have to come in and do a fake Southern accent?
Right, exactly, exactly.
My family.
He's kind of what Florida needs because he enjoys recruiting, and he's so the opposite of what they've had with McElwain and then Mullen, where it's like, okay, we can all see this working. I, for the life of me, still cannot see Brian Kelly working long-term in LSU.
Oh, you can't.
And there's nothing to that other than, man, that is just the weirdest, like, fit that I think I've ever seen. LSU, I was born in Louisiana. All my cousins are season ticket holders, all that kind of stuff. LSU football is life down there. It's LSU and the Saints, and it is a party every single game.
You mean a guy from New England can't come in there and establish the culture?
And that may be wrong of me to say, but God, man, those LSU fans identify with their head coach, and I just don't see the parallels there. Now, you go out and you win 10 a year, and you work in a natty like every coach at LSU has done the last, 3 or 4?
Right.
Then, you'll be part of the culture, but I think the build-up to there is going to be a little difficult.
Well, that's why I think some of the people in Louisiana wanted Napier. Napier from the Ragin' Cajuns, it would have been very easy with all the recruiting connections he had already made. He's 20 or 18 years younger than Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly's in his early 60s. I agree it was an odd hire. We talk about the game for Brian Kelly. Well, what about this game for Billy Napier? I mean, there is a giant difference between 4-3 and 5-2, particularly when the cocktail party is next on the schedule. So I think it is a huge game for Florida.
Agree. I was telling somebody yesterday, this is the biggest game of the year to date for Anthony, for Napier, for everybody.
Yeah.
Involved, because you've had this seesaw of emotions in that locker room and with fans, and this is really the first opportunity since Kentucky that you've got to be excited about back-to-back games, right? To go, okay. It may not be pretty, but we're establishing an identity. You can't let that opportunity pass you because if you look at the schedule moving forward, it's hard to find 2 games that fit that mold again back-to-back.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think this is big, and I think if there's any prayer or any chance at all against Georgia, you got to come out of this game with confidence and health. Heading into next week's their bye, right?
Yeah.
You have to have confidence and health heading into that bye. If you have any prayer at all against Georgia. So I think this game is big for a number of reasons.
And I think expectations changed after Utah, and then they came back to reality against Kentucky. But before the season started, in early to mid-August, if you were to tell Gator fans 5-2 going into the bye,
oh God,
I think they would have taken that.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. But, that's just a behavioral trait, right? Like what we want at one point doesn't mean we're going to want that at that point in 2 months.
Right.
So, that's just, we're all like, we all change like that. I get it.
Gigantic game, 4-2 LSU, 4-2 Florida. We'll talk about the SEC slate here in a moment. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. All right, let's get into some of these other games, and we'll get back to Florida, LSU to close it out. What a Saturday night in the state of Florida. You got LSU and Florida in Gainesville basically at the same time down the channels. You got Clemson at Florida State. Florida State started 4-0. You lose to Wake. You lose to NC State. If they lose to Clemson, you wonder if that 3-game losing streak almost eliminates what the Noles did to begin the year.
I hope not. I hope not, especially when you look at the way they've lost the last 2 games, especially NC State. That was brutal for them. I looked at something the other day that had their percent chance to win the remaining games, like broken down by each game.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be underdogs in like 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, they still got Clemson, Miami, although Syracuse. Syracuse, Florida.
Miami right now is but if you look at Vegas, projected to beat Florida State.
Wow, okay.
I think Syracuse, same way. They're projected to beat Florida.
Yeah, Syracuse, nobody's talking about. They're very quietly at 5-0.
That's because nobody cares. Let's not start talking about Syracuse.
Well, no, I'm not saying we're going to break down Syracuse, but Florida State plays them.
No, I know. But they are, and the thing I saw, they have like a 68% chance to beat Florida, right? So to your point on this, like a lot of goodwill can be recovered if you beat Clemson, and they can, by the way. They can. They should have beaten North Carolina State, but you can easily say they also should have lost to LSU. So, we can play that game all day. But to your point, this is a big one for Florida State. I don't think it's season-defining, because I think if they rattle off 4 or 5 to end the year, all's good in Tallahassee, but I think it's a really big game for what they're trying to do.
You mentioned the recruiting for Florida. Based on what I've seen online, Florida State's trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a big recruiting weekend in Tallahassee. The Gators, primetime, ESPN, LSU, Florida State, primetime, ABC, Clemson. If one wins and one doesn't, that could sway a little bit in the recruiting.
Yeah, I wonder, because, I don't think that these prospects are going to a game looking for a win. I really don't think that. Not when you understand where these programs are at, right? So it's like if somebody's down to Florida State, or there's 2 of their top 5, I don't think week to week they look at the box score and go, well, Florida won, Florida State didn't, so now Florida edges ahead.
No,
you know what I mean?
I just think with their official visit, though, a win would be the hot fudge on the ice cream, maybe, the cherry on top.
Yeah, maybe. These official visits are so elaborate, Hack. Like, I've been on a couple. The game is almost like the dessert.
Okay, but that's interesting, because a lot of people don't have your perspective. So we hear Denny Thompson is going for an official visit. What happens? You come in on Friday?
Well, if you have a high school game.
Oh,
a lot of these guys have a high school game, so they'll either, depending on where they're at in the country, they'll either come right in Friday night after their game, or they'll fly in early Saturday morning. But you are wined and dined for 2 straight days. Whatever you want, you got there. It's all taken care of. It's all paid for.
Now, for a big game like Florida LSU, will they take you to the footballing facility? Do they take you to the Gator Walk? Do they do all that?
Yeah, you'll go have lunch somewhere in Gainesville, right? Like you'll go to a restaurant or something like that and have lunch. And then from there will be, all kinds of activities leading up to the game at the football complex. Mm-hmm. Right, and then you'll go to the game, and then at halftime, maybe you go back in, and they have a really nice dinner for the guys on their official visit.
Nice.
Right, something like that. And then after the game, there's a whole other thing, and then Sunday, you'll probably end up at Napier's house or something like that, right? And so the game, and that's why I was talking about the atmosphere. I think the atmosphere and the competitiveness of the game makes a longer lasting memory than, I remember I took my Florida visit and I was going to go there, but they lost. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that is, if you're looking at the whole thing, that may be less than 10%. All
right, let's look at some of the other SEC games. Again, we'll get back to Florida LSU here at the end. Auburn, Ole Miss. How good's Ole Miss?
I mean, it must be pretty freaking good, right?
Yeah. You like that quarterback, Jackson Dart?
I do. This is a good quarterback room. He's done a good job. One of our guys is there as well, Davin Widener from Cocoa. And it's a really good quarterback room. They do a really good job developing quarterbacks. The Kentucky game, to me, like, I like to see teams that are top 10 teams bury somebody when they get the chance. And Ole Miss had the chance multiple times in that game. They didn't. Mm-hmm. But they're still undefeated, and they're playing well. And, I mean,
if you're undefeated in the middle part of October, you're doing something
pretty damn
right.
Good. And Auburn, I don't know that they're going to put up much of a fight against Ole Miss at this point.
That's the high noon kick on ESPN, 11 a.m. out in Oxford. Vandy goes to Georgia. There's no issues there, right?
No.
Vandy was a nice story at the beginning of the year, but that has quickly fallen off.
That quarterback for Vandy is pretty decent, man.
He is.
Yeah, he's going to be a good player.
Arkansas, BYU. You're from the state of Arkansas. They upset with Sam Pittman?
I hope not. They shouldn't be.
You could argue Arkansas. Well, there are other bigger disappointments. Oklahoma, probably. In the SEC, Arkansas is probably the biggest disappointment of the year, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know they're frustrated with the coordinators, and that comes, what are they, on a 3-game skid?
Yeah.
I mean, that comes with that. But I think Sam Pittman is going to be the coach of Arkansas for a long, long time.
And I love Sam Pittman.
I do, too. He's one of my favorite guys.
There were a lot of expectations on them coming into the year.
Which is why they shouldn't be mad at Sam Pittman, by the way, because they haven't had expectations in Fayetteville, Arkansas since Bobby Petrino hopped on a motorcycle with a blonde.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that was the last time that they had expectations. So you have a coach that got you to the expectation point. And by the way, when he came in, you hadn't won an SEC game in 2 years. Yeah, you better hold on to him.
Did he get in that neck brace because of a motorcycle accident or something else?
What are you talking about?
I'm just asking.
You talking about
Bobby Petrino? Yeah.
Oh.
When he held that press conference, they claimed it was an accident. I'm asking you.
That was back in the YOLO days, man.
Yeah,
that was like
you're from out there. There's all sorts. You want to read some fascinating rumors? Go look up the Bobby Petrino conspiracy theories. That might have not necessarily been
people don't realize,
from a motorcycle accident.
People don't realize he had them up to like number 3 in the country.
Oh, yeah. No.
They were cooking.
Yeah. Well, I remember the days of Houston, with Darren McFadden, Peyton Hillis, Felix Jones. They've had good good teams out there. I asked you.
Leave up Matt Jones.
Oh, Matt Jones. Yeah, Matt Jones as well.
Jaguars legend, baby.
I asked you about Ole Miss. Let me ask you about Mississippi State. Boy, they'd love to have that LSU game back because that's their only blemish. That Will Rogers quarterback.
He's legit.
He's good.
No, he's legit. He is.
By the way, Mississippi State at Kentucky.
That could be a good one. I mean, Kentucky defensively sets up really well against what Mississippi State likes to do. If you can get pressure with your front 4 and drop the other 7, it's hard. That's what Georgia does. Occasional zone blitz, occasionally push into man, like press man, stuff like that. If you can show them a different looks and you're just better athletically than they are, then that's the only way you beat Mike Leach. Mike Leach has, probably the greatest offensive mind in college football, but cares less about recruiting than Dan Mullen.
Yeah, right.
Right, and he's unapologetic about it.
He's a weird guy. I like him. Mike Leach is out there.
Oh, he's
I'll never forget this. When he was at Texas Tech, the way you get head coaches on radio interviews is you go through the sports information office.
Yeah.
So I think like Graham Harrell was in the Heisman running, and we were getting all the Heisman head coaches on. So I called Texas Tech, and they're like, yeah, we don't set anything up for coach. He likes you to call him directly. So they just gave me Mike Leach's cell phone number. I'm like, all right, that's weird. I'm like 23 years old. What am I doing with Mike Leach's cell phone number? I call Mike Leach. Hello, coach. It's Ryan Green in Jacksonville. Yep. You going to come on and talk about Graham Harrell? Absolutely. It was like one-word answers, but he did not do anything typical. It was all different.
I will tell you this, man. Gardner Minshew is another client of mine, and really close with Gardner. Gardner would die for that man.
Yeah.
And Gardner absolutely loves that man, and everybody that plays for him is that way. my point about the recruiting is when you get up against Georgia and you get up against even Kentucky, that's where recruiting comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can have the best scheme ever, but if those guys are just better than your guys, like it's going to take something special. But
that kind of goes into Dan
Will
Mullen.
Rogers he's a legit first-round prospect when it's his time.
Yeah, they're a good football team. That's on the SEC Network at 7:30. All right, 2 final games. Boy, Knoxville, my goodness. Alabama and Tennessee. A lot of people are picking Tennessee, and we've seen how many times when people are picking against Bama, they come out and play their game of the year. Do you expect Alabama to win that game?
Oh, man. I expect Alabama to win every game, but I will be dialed into this one.
Yeah.
This one should be fun. And credit Heupel, man, because for the longest time, Tennessee had turned into Nebraska. I remember when, right? And then now, what is second year?
Second year.
Game day's there twice, right? And not like one of these fluke game day things like, hey, we're going to go to App State. Like, legit, they should be there.
I mean, if Tennessee wins this game, they are legit in the playoff conversation.
Here's the thing. November 4th or November 5th, whatever that Saturday is, becomes the game of the year in the country.
Is that Tennessee, Georgia?
Yeah, which I'm going to, actually.
Oh, nice.
Josh Heupel has done a phenomenal job.
I told you this last week. Billy Napier, Mario Cristobal, Brian Kelly, all these coaches that just arrived at these big programs. If Heupel does this on Saturday, which I don't believe he will, I think Alabama wins. But if Tennessee wins, these coaches that just arrived, their clock gets sped up a little bit because of what Heupel's doing in Knoxville.
Yeah, and I think all the ones you just named are okay with that. I think they're speeding up their own clock, right? They want to win. What's the line to this game? Do you have that up?
I do not.
Okay.
I would imagine, if I was guessing, I'd say Alabama.
Stand by.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Graham will find it.
I thought Graham had this stuff memorized.
He should. He was telling me all about what he was doing last night with Louisiana and Marshall.
The problem is I'm a live bettor.
Oh.
I always like to tap in live, so I'm not always tuned into the pregame lines.
Louisiana guy is a 6 points guy.
Oh, is that
really?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice game last
He was
night.
good.
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
really good.
All right, so while we get that, let's get back into Florida, LSU. What's your thought? Saturday night in the Swamp.
I was thinking about this on the way in. I have no idea. Of either team. That's why I'm kind of excited.
Well, the only thing I know is that LSU is going to get a massive break. That's what I said to you earlier.
Hold on. This could be a good, little mini segment here. What do we know for sure that's going to happen Saturday? You don't know that for sure. You know what I mean? Sure.
I've seen enough Florida LSU games to know.
You're basing it on history.
Yeah.
But what you got the line for Tennessee, Alabama?
No, I was going to give you something I knew from LSU, which is that Jaden Daniels is going to scramble every other play.
Right, and he's going to miss wide open guys. So we know that. We don't know which Anthony's going to show up, right? We don't know what the rest of LSU's like. I don't know how you would even have a gut feeling about this game. I have zero idea what's going to happen in this.
I expect it to be a fourth quarter game, I guess, and I do expect something to go LSU's way just based on history. But I get the sense Florida's going to win. And I really hope they win, because if they win, I get to call Matt Hayes up, because he has an unnatural love affair with Brian Kelly, and I get to rub his nose in it a little bit on Saturday night. That's my sole motivation for hoping Billy Napier and the Gators pull this off, is that Brian Kelly loses. Wow. I want Brian Kelly to lose more than I want Billy Napier to win, and it has really nothing to do with Brian Kelly. It's all about Matt Hayes.
If you enjoy somebody holding a grudge against you, my suggestion is you get to know Hacker.
I had to hear.
Graham, we used to do Friday Night Lights. And the same grudge that he had when we started, which we did it for 6 years?
A long time, yeah.
He was still talking about 6 years later.
I have had to hear about Brian Kelly for months and months and months, and I just really hope Billy Napier gives him the beating on Saturday night.
I'm not making this prediction, but for some reason, the McElwain against Ole Miss game keeps popping into my head when I think about this.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Follow me on this, because if you remember that game, nobody expected that. It was a similar situation that you didn't really know what you were going to get. And it was at Florida. It was a night game. I'm not saying Florida's going to win like that, but for some reason, that's the game that keeps popping into my head. And I haven't thought about that game since it happened. But when I think about this, I think about that one.
The biggest difference I think, is that team, for the flaws that they had, and then obviously Will Greer's issues later, that team had playmakers.
I agree.
Especially Callaway.
But you didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, that's fair.
By the way, we got to go quick here. Alabama's a 7-point favorite.
Wow. 7?
Yeah.
The over-under 65.5.
I may go over on that one.
I like the over, too.
Yeah, I may go over.
Especially if Bryce Young plays.
That's interesting.
It'll be a great Saturday.
We can turn this into a gambling show. I got no issues with that.
Not only do you have Tennessee, Bama, Florida, LSU, Florida State, Clemson, Penn State, Michigan, a battle of unbeatens.
That's
Oklahoma State, TCU, a battle of unbeatens.
Nah.
Well, it's Big 12.
This is the best time of the year, by the way.
No, it's a great
Just
Saturday.
great college football every Saturday.
Baseball playoffs.
All right.
NFL.
30 seconds. Is Florida win?
Basketball starting. Yeah, I think they do.
Yeah, I do too. I think they win.
I have no idea. Like, if you're asking me a score, I have no clue.
No, I don't care if it's 3-2.
This could be 17-14 or it could be 41-37.
Right.
I have no idea.
I think they win the game, and I think that sets up, under the circumstances, as good a situation going into the cocktail party as Florida could have asked for a couple of weeks ago.
No, I agree. I agree. We'll talk about it then, but this matchup for Georgia is the worst possible scenario for Florida. But the matchup with LSU is not bad.
Yeah, so Florida, LSU on Saturday. We'll be back next week here on Gator Bytes to break it down. Then a bye week. You kind of exhale a little bit. 7 games in, 5 games to go. He's Denny Thompson. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. Thank you for watching and listening to Gator Bytes on 1010XL.com and on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page.